It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. USC and UCLA have been approved
together
for a move to the Big Ten after the conference's presidents and chancellors voted unanimously to accept both schools. They will begin competing in the Big Ten starting in 2024. In the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies and star Ja Morant have agreed to a massive 5-year, $193 million designated rookie maximum extension that could become worth $231 million, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson's hearing with the NFL and NFLPA Joint Disciplinary Officer Sue Robinson officially concluded on Thursday after 3 days, and now the wait begins on Robinson's ruling regarding a potential suspension for Watson allegedly violating the league's personal conduct policy for sexual misconduct. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
All right, let's make it happen. Welcome in on this Friday. Buck Rising here with you until 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica back there making it go.
I am Lucas Panzica.
So I hear. Are you okay? What happened? Does anybody else get heckled during their sports updates the way that I do to you?
Not that I know of.
Well, you know, it's what makes our relationship special, bud. It's good to see you.
I Ron Burgundy the beginning of my update. I said my name, then I looked down at my paper, and then I said my name.
I'm Ron Burgundy. Go bleep yourself, San Diego. Anyway, 615-737-1045. Jump in if you like. We'd love to have you. I hear there's a lot to talk about today. What the hell? I had to take yesterday for some personal things. I appreciate you guys being understanding on that. I know that Lucas and Will and Robert did a great job. But it was a fight for who wanted the headlines throughout the course of Thursday's news cycle. You have everything happening with NBA free agency. You have Kevin Durant saying, yeah, you know what? Kyrie just opted in to the Nets. I'm probably good. I'm going to keep it moving. You have everything that went down in the world of college football where all of a sudden the Big Ten will soon include USC and UCLA. What? I thought, you know those like blue alert things that TBI kept sending out last week, the emergency alert things, that there was like 17 of them, and they kept I think their system screwed up. Like I thought that the push alerts, the push notifications that I get on my phone from ESPN and Bleacher Report and all these other outlets to keep me, updated with the news, I thought there was a typo. I was like, what do you mean? The Big Ten? Nebraska, Indiana, Ohio State, and Los Angeles? What is this? And of course, it's just in keeping with what our buddy Chris Childers has predicted from the start. By the way, Childers going to be on. Slay is going to be here as well as a former collegiate athlete himself, because I think everybody's attention gravitates towards college football, right? Sure. Why wouldn't it? That's the biggest sport. That's why a lot of these decisions are being made. That's the moneymaker. That's the reason why television networks are willing to pay hundreds of millions of dollars. That's why Joe Buck can do Monday Night Football now for ESPN, because Fox said, okay, give us a Big Ten game, and we'll give you Joe Buck to be your voice of Monday Night Football. And yeah, you can have Troy on the side. That's the value of these things. But it's not just about college football. It's about everything that falls under the intercollegiate athletics umbrella and how much less important it has just been made. Now, college football is going to take a beating. For Vandy fans, how many Vandy fans are sweating today the idea that as super conferences start to align, as college football becomes the NFL, how many Vandy fans are sitting there saying, are we going to be part of the SEC in 10 years?
They're not going to turn down that check.
Oh, sure. But the SEC is going to be like, yeah, if we can have Oregon, get the hell out of here. you're going to start seeing not only conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC add people in, they're going to look to trim the fat. They're going to look to make in the same way as we've already seen the profits go crazy and everything be dictated by the television dollars. You're going to see when next the television contracts start to get negotiated.
But you do have to look past football when you're talking about Vanderbilt. You have to look at academics. You have to look at baseball.
Understood. But I still think that everything that is driving these decisions starts and ends with football. Basketball's fine. It's a revenue sport. It is a fraction of the importance of what we collectively pay attention to. If you're a Minnesota fan and you're in the Big Ten and you're looking around and saying, are they going to get rid of me for something better for Washington? Even though a couple of institutions in the Pac-12 have since been contacted since UCLA and USC decided that they were going to make this jump. As soon as 2024, the season before the SEC absorbs, theoretically, Oklahoma and Texas. Looking at this whole situation right now, man, I don't know how you can't see, how all of us cannot see that college football as we know it is done. It's just done. And you know who told you that a year ago? A year ago this month, as a matter of fact. Chris Childers of SiriusXM. He's going to join us at 12:20. Coach Mac's going to be here as well. We've got a lot of different things to do today. A lot of ground to cover, and all of it revolving around this one situation. I found it interesting. I was reading the Wall Street Journal because it's a business decision. It's a business decision. And I was reading the Wall Street Journal last night or on my plane ride home. The Big Ten leadership, they vote unanimously to add USC and UCLA. It's the latest in a move to join the Big Ten, which just accelerates the consolidation of college football. And college football is the headliner there. Notice, again, that the headline is straight up this: USC, UCLA to join the Big Ten, accelerating college football's consolidation. Not even Wall Street Journal, as a business entity, as one of the best places or best outlets that covers these kind of things, they're not even giving consideration to anything outside of football because they understand what's driving. Your softball, college baseball, all these other things that are just going to get lumped in. Hey, ESPN, if you give us X amount of billions of dollars for the rights to the SEC, we'll throw in, a college soccer tournament here and there for you to put on during your July. I don't know the college soccer season, forgive me. For you to put on during your July daytime programming. Here you go. Just take it. Because they're just trying to gobble up live sports rights. Because that's the one thing that's been DVR proof. That's been cord-cutting proof to a degree. Football. And looking at this, I think it's hard for people to swallow. I'd be curious to know your initial reaction. 615-737-1045. Because mine was this. Well, it's the NFL. What's been the craziest college football or college athletics? I'm trying myself not to make it all about college football, even though it largely is. What's been the craziest headline that we've seen in the last year, since last July, since the Supreme Court ruling regarding college athletics and name, image, and likeness?
By the way, happy birthday. Happy first birthday to name, image, and likeness in college football.
And happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
I don't think it's fair to assign a sex to the Supreme Court ruling.
NIL is gender neutral.
Okay, very good. As long as we can agree on that, because we can't agree on anything else as a country, except for the Supreme Court, who said, "Yeah, you know what? This Ponzi scheme, get it out of here." It's like again, how people are furious. Absolutely furious at the Supreme Court right now. And that's the one thing that everybody looked around and said, yeah, Supreme Court got it right. Consensus. It's crazy. So my first reaction was, okay, they want a mini NFL. And all these headlines that they're getting, think about this. How much college football would we be talking outside of what Nick Saban is going to say at SEC Media Days in 19 days from now? What other topic has this kind of cataclysmic effect on the news cycle? This is exactly what college football wants. and they don't care if you're not going to get your historic geographical rivalries anymore. They don't care about that at all because it's not business efficient. This is what ultimately ends up being the best for the financial health of the sport and for sports in general at the collegiate level. And who loses out on this at the end of the day? Well, the fan. Those of you who care about historic rivalries in conferences that geographically make sense. How naive do we all feel looking back at a time where Missouri didn't necessarily make sense in the SECs? Do you remember that?
Like Texas A&M?
What?
In the Southeastern Conference?
What are they doing there? And that was the first. By the way, it's like the 10-year anniversary of that today.
Exactly 10 years. 2012 was their first season.
So a very happy birthday to the first domino in college football reconferencing that now finds us today talking about USC and UCLA in the damn Big Ten.
And happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
I love it, but I completely understand why you hate it. And I imagine many of you do. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're going to be talking about this a lot today. Slay's going to be in here. We're also going to get into this NBA nonsense. Lucas threatened to take a knee during the show if I talked about Kevin Durant today. And I'm going to do it anyway. You can't tell me what to do.
I have the right to peaceful protest.
Well, you have the right to turn off my microphone, but not now because it's 1045 The Zone.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Indeed it is. Welcome back. Happy Friday for those of you who celebrate. Perhaps you're already celebrating. It is July 4th weekend. I know people are going to be getting after it to a big extent. Ron Slay, what do you mean? You just threw your hands up in the air at me. What happened?
Context clues, Buck. What do you think happened?
He's not here?
Not yet. Do you see him?
No, I don't see him. Did you call him?
Yep.
Do you think he's asleep?
There's not a 0% chance. It's more than zero.
It's more than zero. All right. I would like, so let's put the radio station to work, shall we? I would like every one of you within the sound of my voice to absolutely hammer Ron Slay on social media, because I'm sure he's taking. Do you think he sleeps in until this time, or do you think he wakes up and then goes to sleep at 10 o'clock?
I think he wakes up maybe for parental reasons. And then,
that's right. He has kids.
And then takes his nap and then wakes back up. That's what I think, based on his nap schedule as it has pertained to this show in the past.
Do you think that's just a convenient excuse to not deal with us?
No, I believe Slay. I believe Slay.
He's just passed out in the boom boom room.
Yeah.
Had too many pancakes this morning, or whatever was on the griddle, because it was something. Anyway, Slay will be here at some point. Don't worry. We're going to flesh him out. We're going to smoke him out. We're going to use, in the next 20 minutes, we are going to smoke out Ron Slay. But not in the context that you may be thinking of. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. But here's the thing, okay? Looking at what different conference commissioners have said about this, and what athletic directors at prominent universities have said about this, I thought it was interesting, talking about USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten, or planning to join the Big Ten. Gene Smith, who's the athletic director at Ohio State, I thought made a pretty interesting point as to why the Big Ten, outside of money, wants to do this.
For Ohio State, it frankly provides two other schools in unbelievable markets that frankly can carry some weight. At the end of the day, Ohio State has been a program for the Big Ten over the years that has been at the top of the pyramid in the Big Ten and carried a significant amount of weight and value of the Big Ten. Now we have two others who can contribute to that weight, and really excited about that. That's no disparagement to any other school. That's just reality. That's what we asked specifically about Ohio State.
It's just reality. That's the line that kind of stuck with me the most. It's just reality. This was always the way that it's going to be. Do you think, because this is as consequential a change as we've had in college sports. And I feel like that's the fifth time I've said that this summer, or certainly in the last year, since all of this stuff has really, really started to change. Everything has evolutions, right? Sports are cyclical. And as we've seen the way that sports have evolved, things like boxing and horse racing are clearly past the peak of their powers. These are sports that historically have meant a lot to American sports fans. These are things that, because of the way that they haven't necessarily adapted, or the product doesn't necessarily translate in the network television era, have lost ground. Baseball is a big one of these as well. Hell, I can't remember who did the interview with Rob Manfred the other day. It might have been Sportico, where the reporter just asked him the question, hey, Rob, do you hate baseball? Do you hate baseball? Because that's the allegation that a lot of people are lobbing at the commissioner of the sport, because of the way that he hasn't necessarily handled their business well and put baseball in the position that football now completely occupies. It's the evolution of sports. It's the evolution of media consumption and how all this goes about. And it's the thing that makes sense in the most practical way. But I guess my question is, what comes next, right? Where are we now in all of this? What does this mean for independence? Big brands like Notre Dame. What does Notre Dame do? What the hell is going to happen to the ACC? because I don't think there's room for 3 major mega conferences to exist. Hell, we've just seen 2 of the Power 5 pretty much cannibalize 2 of the other ones. The Big 12 and the Pac-12, they're in an untenable position. They're going to fold, or at least they're going to look drastically different than they have at any other point in their existence. So as college football tries to keep up and tries to evolve, still America's second favorite sport, and then everything else third by a wide margin. How do they compete for eyeballs when their weekend gets completely sucked up in the Monday news cycle by what? What are we all talking about Monday morning during the football season? Well, we're talking about what Tom Brady did. What record did Tom Brady break? What Ryan Tannehill did or did not do against the New York Jets? All these different things. The NFL has sucked up their air, has completely taken their space. And so what are they going to do? How do we get ourselves back into the news cycle, back into the day-to-day consciousness? Well, let's just create a mini NFL. And it's going to be lesser football. It always has been. But it's lesser football with the biggest brands. And that's the thing that the networks are going to buy. Brady Quinn was talking about Notre Dame with our buddy Josh Pate on CBS Sports HQ. Pate, I think, is out in Los Angeles for something. I don't know if it's got anything to do.
It was Elite 11 finals.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Pate, from what I had seen, did not anticipate this news coming down while they were at Elite 11.
Yeah, I was about to say, because Josh doesn't do guests on Late Kick, and all of a sudden I'm looking around and there's Brady Quinn.
Yeah, he did come back today, I believe.
Okay. Let's hear from Brady Quinn on what this means for Notre Dame.
All right, dude, I know you've done a whole lot of hits today, TV, radio. I can't even imagine how stretched thin you've been. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that Brady, and I want you to take us inside those super exclusive Notre Dame group texts. When this stuff broke this morning, and everybody from coast to coast said, oh, this is going to force Notre Dame's hand, how did Irish Nation react?
It's funny. You get both sides of it, and I see both sides of it. There were some people who said, man, this puts us in a great position. Who's a more valued, desired brand in school right now than Notre Dame? And that's not just, for the ACC, which everyone seems to think that that's like a natural fit because of their soft affiliation and the other sports outside of football that are a part of the ACC. But no one seems to look at the Big Ten and go, well, wait a second. Doesn't this make the most sense? I mean, that's the conference that's going to be able to pay you the most with the new TV rights deal coming up. That's the conference that most represents probably what you'd like to do from a scheduling standpoint. I mean, you're an independent, and there's been years where they've literally played games in New York's, Yankee Stadium on the East Coast, in Chicago, then in LA, or playing up versus Stanford up in Northern California. You've hit all 3 spots along the way. Only the Big Ten's going to offer you that as a conference. So I actually think as you look down the road, as far as where Notre Dame would potentially join, if they felt the need to. And I think honestly it has to come down to 2 powers, superpower conferences or power conferences, however you want to describe it. I think it has to come down to that, and really where it doesn't leave them an opportunity to make it to the college football playoff or to be able to have the sort of revenue that they're looking to generate on their own as an independent. If that comes to fruition, I think the Big Ten makes the most sense for a fit. But again, there's still, the soft agreement with the ACC right now, and the NBC Sports still has the rights. And so those things have to be sorted out over the next few years. But to be honest with you, Josh, I really see both sides of it.
It makes a lot of sense why it's unsustainable, why Notre Dame would continue to want to exist that way, and why also they're not going to be able to. You guys got this news in real time yesterday because James Ashley writes in the YouTube chat, Lucas did an amazing job yesterday. You should be proud, Buck. I am. Good job, buddy. I'm glad that went well for you. How did that news hit you guys when you were on the air? Because that happened in the middle of the show, right?
It happened right at 12:30. There was about half an hour left. We were in the midst of a discussion of first-year NFL head coaches in the best and worst situations. And
my God, how happy were you?
Yeah, quite a summer topic. Well, I was on a roll talking about Dennis Allen at the New Orleans Saints when Will Bowling looked at his computer like he had just seen something horrific. I mean, the look on his face, he kind of kept looking at his computer and frantically looking back at me, and I literally stopped mid-sentence. I said, you look like you have some breaking news. And it's just such...
In the middle of Dennis Allen analysis. Very, very important.
Right. Talking about Chris Olave in the wide receiver room. But news of this magnitude, you in the immediate aftermath of it, we had 30 minutes to work with it. You start big, right, and kind of try to work your way down. So the first thought I had is, okay, what road does this lead us down? It leads us down the road of a complete reshaping of everything we think we know about college football and the landscape, geographically, competitively, conferences, college football playoff expansion. It resets that conversation of college football playoff expansion. Literally everything is on the table. Notre Dame in the past, if Notre Dame was ever to join a conference, a Power 5 conference, it was the ACC. They're an ACC school in every other sport. That's not a shoe-in anymore, as we just heard from Brady Quinn. It resets everything that we think we know about college football.
I looked at this, and I felt, I'll be honest, it made me excited about the possibility of this. Because I'm not somebody who gets caught up in these. I mean, obviously rivalries are important. And I saw the point made yesterday on CBS Sports HQ. I don't think it was Pate. Might have been Barrett Sallee or one of their colleagues talking about this. Those still may exist, right? Because the idea that USC and UCLA are just going to be the only two teams that regularly travel to the Midwest as a part of the Big Ten. Nebraska, I think, is the geographically closest Big Ten school to either of those places. For that to be what USC and UCLA are going to do on a regular basis without having additional West Coast teams to join them, I don't think that's going to be the case. So now it becomes, okay, if the Big Ten is going to eventually, no timetable, although it's probably sooner rather than later, if the Big Ten absorbs Notre Dame, well, what does the SEC want? What is the SEC going to add to keep pace with a massive brand? Now, they got two. They got two of the big ones. They got two of the biggest fish out there, two of the biggest possible, Texas and Oklahoma. And then when you go about this, does the cynicism of knowing that this is just about money, this is all about greed, and that's fine if you're cool with it. That's fine if you're somebody who's going to look at this and say, yeah, it's going to provide me with the best possible matchups more frequently in the most easily accessible way. Makes a lot of sense as a consumer. In fact, Paul Feinbaum, was he on his show? Where is he? On Get Up this morning on ESPN. Paul Feinbaum, mouth of the South, right? This does nothing but good things for Feinbaum. So how does Paul feel about this? I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, Hannah, I'm just gratified that the leaders of college athletics care so much about the student athletes and their mental well-being, that they're going to put softball players on a plane in California to go to Piscataway for a weekend series with Rutgers. But that's where we are, and trying to take my cynical hat off, which is impossible today in college athletics. What we have is just a battle of the two behemoths, and that's the SEC and the Big Ten. This is similar to what's going on Wall Street between the biggest companies vying for your dollar. And that's what this is about. This is about money, pure and simple. Hannah, don't let any college commissioner or president tell you otherwise. They're a greedy bunch. That's what they care about. And the students who happen to play athletics are the pawn in this big prize.
So Feinbaum doesn't like it, huh?
He laid it out.
I mean, he's right.
Yeah, you can hate it and recognize why it's happening.
Do you think, I mean, most people probably hate it, right? Most people who care about this, about college sports, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, softball, women's tennis, whatever.
Yeah.
Probably hate it.
Because it's different from the NIL thing, right? Because you can be the traditional purist college football fan that recognizes why NIL is a good thing and a necessary thing that is long overdue. But this is different, right? Because this doesn't benefit the student athletes in the way that NIL does.
No, and this is my whole point. This is why I believe college athletics to still, even as we have name, image, and likeness, even as we have the transfer portal, I believe college athletics to be one of the most crooked institutions, not just the NCAA, the whole premise. You can be one of these people who still gets entrenched with the idea that, yeah, they're getting a free education out of it. And I understand why that means so much to so many people who free education or affordable education does not necessarily come easily too. I'm not dismissing that. I'm dismissing the idea that that should be enough. That name, image, and likeness money should be enough. That the average NIL deal of $350 some odd should be enough. Why is all of this happening? Why are they good with the athletes making the NIL money? Because they're making the real money and the athletes don't sniff it. And it doesn't come at their benefit. Sure, exposure if you want it, but is it even 1% of college football players that go on to play in the NFL? It's a smaller fraction of college basketball players that go on to play in the NBA. The exposure of what? Yeah, I understand. There are European leagues. There are other professional sports leagues that you can go play in if you want to make a career out of this. Again, there are some of it, but it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. If you want true balance in college athletics, this does not serve that. And more than anything, you shouldn't be blinded by the idea that it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the things that you love about college sports. There's nothing in sports that is more tribal and the thing that people are most passionate about. Is there anything in the NFL that even gets close to an SEC game day atmosphere?
No,
maybe,
I'm very comfortable saying that.
Maybe a Kansas City Chiefs playoff game. Maybe, because I've seen that in real time. Maybe Lambeau. But these are much. This is not the Jets. This is not the Giants. It's not even the Tennessee Titans, right? This is something where there's not a lot else to do in Kansas City, Missouri. There's not a lot else to do in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Like, that's the thing. You don't have it, and it's the closest thing to college football that they have, right? It's in the middle of a neighborhood. I'm looking around at this and saying, there is no way that this benefits the consumer other than the ways that we've just laid out. It's to keep you buying cable. It's to keep you buying cable. And listen, I say that as somebody who probably inherently benefits from stuff like that. Because what are we going to talk about in the Super SEC? We're going to get to talk about not just Texas and Alabama in week 2 of the 2022 regular season, which, by the way, is coming up. No, we get to talk about that as potentially a recurring matchup. Maybe not on an annual basis, but it enters our stream of consciousness far more frequently. It's why we've seen that it's, I'm watching The Wire right now. I think I've told you that before. I'm watching The Wire right now, and they've got crack testers that they bring out to the projects on a regular basis. That's how they get people hooked. That's how they get repeat business. It's a whole business model, right? Is not, LSU and Miami or whomever. I don't know what Miami has Texas A&M this year, right? In week 1, isn't that right? There's an ACC school that has Texas A&M in week 1. I want to say it's the U. But let's just say Texas and Alabama in week 2 as Lucas looks that up to fact check me. That's the tester.
Yeah, week 3.
Week 3 is Miami and Texas A&M. Is that not the college football equivalent of a crack cocaine tester? Yeah, we'll sprinkle this in here every once in a while. And so when we give you the Super SEC with, Miami, Miami, let's just hypothetically, we put Miami now in the SEC, and now you can see that as often as you like. Now we put Texas in the SEC, and you can see Texas and Alabama as often as you like. They're behaving like drug dealers. It's straight up at a much higher level, and maybe a little less sinister, but it's the same kind of pattern of behavior. I think that people are going to still consume this at a rate that justifies the move. I think that whatever you may beat your chest about or double down on in college sports about how it'll never be the same for you, you're still going to watch the Vols on Saturday. You're still going to consume that. It's still going to be a communal experience. It's still going to be something that's passed on through generations. Now, it's just going to be, more about the money. More about the money than it's ever been. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Lucas has an SEC stat of the day, and it's coming up next. Welcome back on this Friday. Buck Rising here with you until 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica making it happen as always. The number 615-737-1045 if you'd like to jump in. College football reconferencing has been the subject on the top of everybody's minds right now. And we'll do the SEC stat of the day here momentarily. Lucas, I'm told, has 2, which we're very excited about. Always good information. We've been going alphabetically starting last week down the programs as we get you ready for college football. What are we, 49 days away from this taking place?
I believe that's right.
So we'll get to Auburn here in a second as the next in line for the SEC stat of the day. But you know what what was second on my mind when I saw this USC UCLA news?
What?
Do you remember the Alliance?
Yeah, I've already got it penciled in as my loser of the weekend. Just a heads up. See if anything changes, but that's currently my loser of the weekend before the weekend.
For those of you who don't remember what exactly I'm referring to, there was a concept of the Alliance formed by the leaders of which conferences? Lucas, can you tell me?
It was the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the Big 12, correct?
The ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12.
The ACC, because the Big 12 was kind of
because
that was stranded.
That's
like,
the one.
Wait for us.
That was the first carcass, right?
Right.
That one was already picked clean. So they're like, all right, the rest of us, we got to band together.
They stepped over the body of the Big 12 to band together and ensure it doesn't happen to them.
And so what did they do? The Big Ten looked around and said, oh, this is kind of working for the SEC. Oh, Fox wants to renegotiate our deal. Okay. Come here, Pac-12.
Knife in the back.
Just twist it a little bit.
It's what happened.
Oh, it's exactly what happened.
They all shook hands. And remember how much we made fun of the Alliance?
Hell yes.
Because it was just this good kumbaya handshake agreement. Hey, I won't screw you over if you don't screw me over.
But the worst part about it was there was nothing like there was no contract agreed to.
Right.
Which, of course, left the door open for somebody to stick a knife in the other one's back.
I can't remember the language in the report that we read that was so funny. It was just men with their word and handshakes.
Maybe.
I mean, that's what it was.
I'm going to see if I can't. There's a website that I've been using now called newspapers.com. It's got like all these articles from all over the place of no free ads, but all these articles from all over the place. And I want to see what it has on the Alliance in college football. Because the first thing that comes up is like oncology. So I can't.
I remember them saying, oh, we don't need a contract. We have handshakes.
We believe in the word of these institutions, of these men. There's a whole article on ESPN from earlier in March, not that long ago, on the Alliance Explained, the ACC, the Big Ten, and Pac-12 on the college football playoff vote, scheduling, and what comes next. So they were, what does come next in the Alliance when they were having this meeting in March? Well, somebody, the Big Ten, plotting. What's the name of the commissioner? The one who absolutely botched.
Kevin Warren,
who was his first year was 2020. So like almost a little bit of grace for how poorly the Big Ten initially handled the decision to not play during the COVID-19 season. The Pac-12, the reason why their conference is probably one of many reasons. It's an accumulation of not taking football and television seriously enough, not prioritizing football as a part of the television experience enough. Why the Pac-12 sits here being, having the meat picked off the bones today. But the Alliance is the thing that popped into my head second after I saw this. It was formed as a counterweight to the SEC, just something to kind of keep the balance of powers, handshakes and all this. And then a statement from the Pac-12. While we are extremely surprised and disappointed by the news coming out of UCLA and USC today, we're confident that the Pac-12 will continue to thrive and grow into the future. Are you now? Because nobody else is. That statement, while we are extremely surprised and disappointed by the news coming out of UCLA and USC today, we're confident that the Pac-12 will continue to thrive and grow in the future. That's what's going to be written on the conference's gravestone. That's going to be that's going to be the thing that I remember once that thing collapses in on itself, because two of its most important member institutions, from a financial standpoint and from a just competency and competitiveness standpoint, said, "Yeah, we're good. You haven't done well enough by us. We're moving on." What's the SEC stat of the day? I'm told you have two.
Yes. Do you want the financial SEC stat of the day, or do you want the football SEC stat of the day first?
Let's do just in keeping with the financial conversation, let's start with the financial SEC stat of the day first.
The first SEC stat of the day is essentially a reminder of the television deal that will begin in 2024 between ESPN and the SEC, a 10-year contract. By the way, 2024 could be year one of Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC. Could be the start of that era, though as of right now, it's as early as 2025. So the current deal with CBS that the SEC has is worth $55 million a year. You know how much the deal with ESPN is worth?
$55 million a year?
That's the CBS deal. How much is the SEC going to get with the deal coming in 2024, beginning with ESPN?
$70 million a year.
$300 million annually for the league.
Oh!
So under that new deal, the 14 member schools, this is not including Oklahoma and Texas,
What?
would expect to receive about $40 million a year solely from the league's television deal.
$300 million a year. That's insane.
So you're looking at SEC schools receiving approximately $40 million a year, again, solely from the television deal. Whereas the Big Ten and their massive blockbuster deal with Fox will have each team receiving approximately $70 million a year. You compare that to what Pac-12 teams are currently receiving from their TV deal. It is in the neighborhood of $20 million a year.
Oh, my God.
It is so overwhelmingly obvious when you even just take a big picture, surface level look at the TV numbers, the disparity between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten / SEC, why this move made sense for USC and UCLA. You say, what? They're going to travel to Rutgers for midseason matchups in softball?
That's right.
Yeah. The Big Ten TV money will greatly outweigh the travel costs of going back and forth from New Jersey.
Hell, they can fly private if they want to. Marciano on YouTube, where you can interact with the show, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. He says the utter shock on Buck's face. I knew the money was massive. I had no concept of that. But okay, consider this. People have considered television in today's modern media environment. Now, this has also been said about radio, and radio is the thing that just continues to live on in ways that honestly I've even been surprised by. The efficacy of it is something that obviously I understand, but like just in terms of what makes sense and where consuming habits are changing, things like television and radio, you would look around and say, yeah, those aren't long for the world, and yet they keep surviving on and continuing to thrive in ways that are meaningful because the reach of it still matters. What happens? What's just happened in the last couple of years that has completely changed the dynamic of networks and live streaming or live broadcasting rights, live event rights?
Yeah, digital streaming.
I ruined it. I said streaming.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Okay.
I had it anyway.
Thank you. Apple and Amazon. How much? Okay, Lucas, look up for me. What do you remember off the top of your head what the Apple TV MLS deal was worth?
$2.5 billion.
That's a fraction of a stock point for Apple. They can throw $2.5 billion at anything if they want to. It's the 15th year anniversary of the iPhone. Happy birthday to the iPhone, by the way.
And happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
Well, I do care very much because my entire life exists on this thing. The Apple Corporation basically owns me. But $2+ billion doesn't mean anything to Apple. They can just throw it at anything they want. What happens when they get in the football game? What happens when that's the kind of money? Apple and Amazon that are competing for these television contracts, quote unquote television contracts, live event rights contracts. It's going to completely, you want to talk about a wealth gap, bud. Whew. This is going to completely revolutionize everything as far as the financial state of these power leagues. That's what they're gearing up for. It's always about how do you continue to evolve your product? How do you continue to make your product something that people cannot live without and that people are going to continue to not just pay for, but pay more for year over year? Well, what's Amazon for one game a week, Thursday Night Football, taking that from Fox, has poured so many resources into the putting on of this product. Now imagine they have a conference rights deal. It's gonna completely explode. You think $300 million a year is nuts? Just wait. We're gonna get into the B's. What's the Auburn SEC stat of the day as we go alphabetically through the SEC programs?
So let's talk some actual football, shall we?
We shall.
The SEC stat of the day concerning the Auburn Tigers, who, as you said, is next on our alphabetical list as we count down towards the 2022 season. The stat of the day is 5. That's the number of on-field assistants that Auburn lost from the first year of the Brian Harsin era. Offensive coordinator Mike Bobo was fired. Co-offensive coordinator and Titans legend Austin Davis stepped down about 43 days after being hired. Harsin's former offensive coordinator at Boise State and who spent last year as an analyst for Auburn, Eric Kiesau, will call plays, though Harsin really has control of the offense. We know Derek Mason decided to leave for the defensive coordinator position at Oklahoma State. Inside linebackers coach Jeff Schmedding promoted to replace him. Defensive line coach Nick Eason leaves for Clemson. Jimmy Brumbaugh replaces him. Do you remember Jimmy Brumbaugh?
I know that name makes me laugh, so I remember the name. I don't remember why I remember the name.
Yeah, it is the coach that Jeremy Pruitt allegedly fired in the middle of a Kentucky game. I like that your only memory was that it was something funny. But 2 new linebacker coaches, a new defensive back coach.
They should not laugh about a man losing his job in the middle of a game. Was it a Kentucky game?
Allegedly, yes.
What a time to be alive.
And Pruitt took over the defensive line coaching duties himself. But I digress. On the field for Auburn, a new quarterback. It is It's like Brian Harsin is starting over. Zach Calzada, by the way, the transfer from A&M, the new quarterback. He's in a similar scenario to a coach going into his first year at a program while facing the pressure of a coach going into his 6th year at a program. If I'm an Auburn fan, Zach Calzada doesn't give me a ton of confidence at quarterback. Penn State at home is the only non-conference game of note this season, but we really need to look at Auburn as a potential last-place finisher in the SEC West this year. With the strength of the division,
that would be fascinating.
Auburn and Mississippi State right now are the 2 contenders for that because there's question marks about LSU. They're unquestionably more talented than Auburn or Mississippi State. Jaden Daniels at quarterback will be the X factor there, the transfer from Arizona State. But Arkansas returns a ton. They lose Traylon Burks. They bring in Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma. They return KJ Jefferson at quarterback. I like Arkansas to push Texas A&M in that second spot in the SEC West. No questions about Alabama. Ole Miss, Portal King, Lane Kiffin brought in a ton to replace what they lost last season.
Portal King. He's out here trying to recruit Kevin Durant. Come to the SIP.
Mississippi State returned 17 starters from a 5-7 team in 2021. And Mike Leach traditionally takes a step in year 3 at his tenures in his other programs. So right now you're looking at Mississippi State and Auburn contending potentially for the final spot in the SEC West.
That would be wild.
And if that happens, it is hard to imagine a year 3 of the Brian Harsin era at Auburn.
Listen, I can't believe he came back, much less them keeping him. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. The SEC West, I mean, it's always a gauntlet, right? And there's no bigger disparity, haves and have-nots, in college football, to be specific, than the SEC, where you've got the bottom feeders and you've got the cream of the crop in the sport, not just in the conference. So looking at Auburn as a potential last place finisher, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with Lucas. Sam Pittman has, maybe it's just because he looks unassuming. And Sam Pittman has been in our lives as a college football coach in some capacity, in some form or fashion, for a long, long time. But like Sam Pittman does not exactly strike me as somebody who should be competing for the spot behind Alabama in the SEC West.
Might be the best fit in the SEC.
It really is.
Yeah, he has done a phenomenal job at Arkansas.
Brent in Franklin. This isn't our Brent who lives in Franklin, right? This is another Brent in Franklin? All right. Brent in Franklin wants to talk college football. Hello, Brent.
Hey, how are you?
We're well.
Very interesting topic here. So the only thing I wanted to observe or just weigh in on is just the whole trickle-down effect of this deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, take, for instance, the what is it, $300 million with ESPN over 10 years?
Annually, yeah.
And you think about, so now you've added in Texas and Oklahoma, which are going to be huge markets, at least Texas, and the advertising dollars, and they probably feel like they came out with a deal because of that, and you're going to have that attention, and the advertisers, they bake that into the offering price. But then the other thing to consider, and I'd love to get your take on this, is where does this take the whole pay for play? And you could have conferences that are getting these type of contracts. These kids are coming out and going, well, geez, I want to play in this conference. And, oh, by the way, I understand that they're getting paid this money, so I'm going to expect to get paid as well. So curious how you feel like, I mean, it just doesn't seem like there's an end in sight as to the momentum of this thing.
Thanks for the call, Brent. I think the answer is unionization among college athletes.
You got to collectively bargain.
You're going to see it. You're going to have, I mean, it's, again, we run this through the prism of football because football is the driving factor in all this. It's not to, I mean, I don't want to say it's because it does discount the other sports. These moves are being made based off the biggest revenue generator, which is first and foremost, unequivocally, football.
College football is going to have to be its own entity.
It may well be. It may well be. Because at some point, like, and this is something that's probably 20 years down the line, but still, I would be thinking about this. I would have this in the back of my mind if I was somebody who was looking at college athletics outside of college football. Because in the same way that we're talking about, the SEC and the Big Ten and other conferences like that, or as they form super conferences, are going to look to trim the fat with member institutions that don't bring to the table what they think they need to bring to the table, not just in the addition, but in subtraction as well. At a certain point, you're going to be looking around at things. Networks are going to be looking around at things and be like, I don't want to pay for soccer anymore. Just don't. Doesn't rate. Let's talk about this, what the future of this looks like, not just in the immediate, but down the line, because I think there is a much larger conversation to be had there. Your calls are welcome. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Big changes coming to the future of college football as USC and UCLA have been approved for a move to the Big Ten after the conference's presidents and chancellors voted unanimously to accept both schools. They'll begin competing in the Big Ten starting in 2024. In the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies and star Ja Morant have agreed to a massive 5-year, $193 million designated rookie maximum extension that could become worth $231 million, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson's hearing with the NFL and NFLPA Joint Disciplinary Officer Sue Robinson officially concluded on Thursday after 3 days, and now the wait begins on Robinson's ruling regarding a potential suspension for Watson allegedly violating the league's personal conduct policy for sexual misconduct. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2, welcome in. Or welcome back if you've been hanging out with us. We're happy to have you. Lucas Panzica, myself, we're going to be here with you until 1 o'clock. Coach Dave McGinnis, Titans Radio, going to weigh in on the subject of the day, which is reconferencing in college football. Mac, I know, has been traveling around right now. I know he's been at a couple of different institutions, and I know he's got a lot of friends in that space who he's been talking to this stuff about. So we're going to get his insights on the matter at 11:20 today. We'd be happy to have you as a part of this show if you would like to be. 615-737-1045. We welcome your participation. 615-737-1045. Now, as we've worked our way through this and kind of seeing where stuff fits, what comes next and what happens. 10 years down the road seems like an eternity, right? Now, for those of you who have lived a little more life, 10 years probably doesn't seem like that long. It's only a decade, a decade in a much larger picture of human life. Now, myself, I'm coming up on 3 decades, almost 2 years away from 3 decades, actually this month, as a matter of fact. Lucas, still about halfway through his 3rd decade at this point, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, very good. So, not as many decades for us. But 10 years down the road, not that long to some people. What does the world of college sports look like in 10 years? What is this going to ultimately lead to? We've brought up streaming money that is going to be influxed into this at some point when Amazon, Apple TV, things of the like. I mean, hell, why wouldn't Netflix try and get in on live sports? Why wouldn't you? Their stock price took a dip here pretty recently. Why wouldn't you try to improve your portfolio and pick up the one thing that people in as many different ways as media consumption has changed? The one thing that remains is live events, live sports events, still right. And number 2, football's going to continue to thrive no matter the circumstance. We've seen this in the NHL, the Stanley Cup Finals, and the NBA Finals. Both took a dip. Both are still not back to pre-pandemic form. You know what continues to exceed? Football. That's the one thing that we as a sports consuming society simply have decided we cannot live without. So I think the first, you want to give an assessment? You want me to do it?
I mean, I think college football is its own entity in a decade, in 20 years, however you want to put it. I think college football is essentially a second tier of the NFL, a minor league system, so to speak.
It's already that now, no?
Sure, but now it'll be more structured that way. But that's kind of what worries me. It worries me that it's going to go after an NFL model because the product is not an NFL product.
It's never been an NFL product, though. We all consume it either way.
But it's always been so different. That's why there's so many college football fans, people that even listen to this station. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. The amount of college football fans in Alabama that don't give a damn about the NFL but they believe college football is the greatest sport on the planet, and it is their religion. They understand that the football product is not what it is on an NFL football field, but it's different. The pageantry, the tradition of it.
Well, they also
the way
don't
it's
have an
structured,
NFL team in the state.
Sure. No, absolutely. But in the SEC, just as a whole, it's college football's the difference between what you see on Saturdays versus what you see on Sundays is a big reason why a lot of people, why generations have fallen in love with college football. I do think there is something to the conversation of pushing those people away when it becomes essentially the same structure as the NFL, just a lesser football product.
I think I know that's something that's factored into their evaluation to make this decision.
It's not going to stop anybody.
No.
Right? Like, the money's not going to stop.
No. The money's going to stay there. The numbers will continue to be good enough to justify the price point relative to everything else, right? Relative to anything else, no matter what you're consuming. Live football rights will continue to carry a greater number, a greater attention, be worth more ad revenue dollars than anything else that you're going to be consuming. Anything else, bar none. I think there's probably a lot of people who agree with that. And I'd be curious to know, like, if you're going to move away from college football, is it just that you're just going to be less passionate about it? Are you not going to treat every Saturday like a religious experience? Or are you just going to become a more casual fan? Because I think that's so much more than 10 years of habit breaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it has to be a generational moving away from the sport. Basketball is a perfect example of this. The NBA specifically. College basketball has its own issues. But let's take the NBA. People who like basketball, there is a pretty good percentage of them, maybe not a majority, but a pretty good percentage of them who don't watch games.
In the NBA?
They just don't watch games.
That's me. I'm one of those people.
What do you mean? So expand that.
I'm not paying attention to the NBA until we get to the playoffs, where I'm halfway paying attention, and then I watch the NBA Finals. I have no investment whatsoever to the NBA, even though I know that it is a far better basketball product than the college game. I'm watching college basketball week in and week out. I get obsessed with college basketball, especially when you get into February and into March. With the NBA, the degree of caring, it doesn't even hold a candle.
It's different, though. That you're talking about something different. I'm talking about a percentage of people who would say, I am a Kevin Durant fan, but don't watch the Brooklyn Nets.
Oh, yeah.
A percentage of people whose consumption of the NBA exists on TikTok, on social media clips of highlight reel dunks, and, incredible three-point shooting abilities and things like that, things that are going to catch eye candy. The thing that the league is terrified of because it's cannibalizing itself. It knows it does that. The NBA knows it does that probably better than any other sport around because the athletes are more marketable than any other sport. You know football players by number, not by what they look like. I mean, Derrick Henry is a nationally commercialized player. And I still think there would be people who would see Derrick around town and other than to notice his size, be like, yeah, I don't know who that guy is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that's the case for all sports, besides football, where you're able to have more of a connection with the athletes with social media and everything that we're seeing.
But the NBA more so than anything.
Yeah.
More so than anything.
It's 5v5.
That's not going to happen in college football.
Yeah.
College football's problem is that, yeah, you may lose some people. You may cause people to love it less. But less is not enough to turn them off. Less is not enough to keep them from watching. It's still a smaller inventory of games that's going to keep you coming back because there's only so many to watch. It's people are more attached to their alma maters than probably any other allegiance that they have, outside of like your spouse. What else are you passionate about? You're passionate about the place that you went to school because for a lot of people, that's what they associate with the best years of their lives, the best friendships or the friendships that lasted the longest or whatever. Career, right. I don't know. I know a lot of people who like studied what we do for a living who don't work anywhere close to this industry.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And like me as a poli-sci major, I'm sitting here doing sports talk radio. And these people who spent years and years of doing local or not even local, student broadcast television, like learning how to cut up reels and stuff like that. They're working in logistics or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Just, doesn't always pan out. what I think the future of this looks like, among a great many other things. Here's the thing that I look at just from the standpoint of somebody who covers the NFL. I think the quantity of coaching candidates, of coaching prospects, of coaching jobs, and of coaching jobs that actually lead you somewhere. I think there's a pipeline of that kind of stuff that's going to dry up significantly. Because it's no longer going to be, okay, you get a college job that you get a college, you're a grad assistant or whatever. Then you advance to quality control coach or analyst or whatever, whatever Butch Jones does I guess Butch Jones now is a head coach.
Head coach at Arkansas State.
All right, let me put some respect on Butch's name. He's no longer the cigar carrier for the Alabama coaching staff when they beat Tennessee. He's actually a head coach now at Mickey Ryan's alma mater. Mickey Ryan, a Butch Jones fan, I guess. Again, maybe. I don't know. But looking at all of this, I think that you're going to see such a dearth of legitimate coaching candidates from one level to the next that it's going to make that a less desirable profession. Now, is football coaching an essential job, an essential line of duty? No. But it's going to make that pool so much smaller. It's going to make those jobs so much harder to get. In the same way as we talk, there's only 32 NFL head coaching jobs, right? Well, what's going to happen when there's only 40 Super League college football jobs, right? When they go 2 giant conferences, 20 institutions apiece, and you have to go through something else just to get to that next level of college football. Because that's the kind of thing that we're talking about here. Now, I think that's a much, much smaller worldview. But that's the kind of stuff that I think about, and something that we're going to talk to Coach Dave McGinnis about coming up next. All right. Friday music, Coach Mac music. The man in black soon to be upon us. Presented by our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans. It's Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio, like an extra set of pads since 1947. Farm Bureau Health Plans is the place to go. So what we're going to get into with Mac in just a moment is what has been at the forefront of every college sports fan's mind, and specifically college football. What does this mean for the institution that not just you have invested so much time in, but your family has invested so much time in? Not just time, but financials. What does this mean for the things that you hold dear on Saturdays in the fall, many of you? And what does it mean for the people who operate in this space? For the coaches who are looking around at this and not only having to adjust with things like name, image, and likeness and transfer portal and all the other stuff that's been added into the college football ecosystem in the last couple of years, but now you're talking about a completely different animal. And for people who work in that space, it's got to be an interesting dynamic. So we're going to talk to Coach Mac about this, who joins us now. Happy Friday, Mac.
Hey, Buck. Good talking to you. Glad to hear you. Glad to hear you back on the air. Yeah, this is going to be. I was just talking to Lucas, and you know, full disclosure, we always want to be honest on this show. When you just called me earlier to ask and to say, hey, what are you thinking about this? You know, I do that 20-week coach-to-coach show with Doug Matthews, and we'll be getting cranked up again. And so we're very invested in what goes on in collegiate football, especially in the Southeastern Conference. But the Southeastern Conference is, was one of the lead dogs in what's getting ready to go on. This is going to be the wave of the future, Buck. You know it, and I know it.
So we do, Mac, and we've known it for some time, right? When, Missouri and A&M they were literally 10 years ago today, but this was just a small domino into ultimately where this is leading. But for people who work in the coaching industry, what their job description contains has evolved so much, even in just the last year. And I wonder what people in that space are talking about, Mac. I don't know what your conversations have been like, and Coach Matthews. I'd be fascinated to get his perspective on that, too. That's why you should be listening to Coach when it comes back.
Yeah, well, look, I've talked to several people on my Mac Over America tour that I just got back from.
Wait, did you sell that to somebody? Did you trademark that? Because if not, you need to, Mac. Mac Over America, I love it.
Because I always visit the football departments at the universities, at the places where I go, because I know people in there. But let me just say this, Buck. This is not anything new. I can take you all the way back because I go a little bit further back. Go to 1996 when the Southwest Conference broke up.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the Big 8 became the Big 12 when you had A&M and Texas and Baylor and Texas Tech go into it, and then the other Southwest Conference schools, were left to fend for themselves and went into the Mountain West. This was all about television revenue then. It has accelerated to the point now. This is what it's about right now. And the Southeastern Conference, with the latest moves that they have made, this Big Ten thing with USC and UCLA, when you're out there on the coast, I lived out there in LA for 2 years, and the collegiate football out there, USC is still the monster out there, but it's not the draw that it used to be.
Sure.
Now all of a sudden you go into the Big Ten, you look at it, you don't worry about geographical alliances anymore, right, Buck? Because you start to look at it now with those two coast teams, the Big Ten now covers from coast to coast because they go all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast with Rutgers.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's all about the television dollar, and it's all about the viewership. And here's the other thing that's getting ready to happen. And in my conversations with people that are involved in the business, and they know that this is coming, that sooner or later you're going to have two power football conferences. And I can't tell you how many schools that will entail in each one of those, but they're going to be their own separate entities. And the NCAA will probably be in charge of basketball tournaments, baseball tournaments, everything else. But the power conferences will be in charge of football, which they pretty much are now anyway.
I mean, it's what makes the most sense, right? It's not the NFL model exactly, but it's something that very, very much mirrors an incredibly successful business plan. And looking at this for what this means for coaches, I just look at this as an additional layer of what these guys are going to have to go through, guys and gals, as that becomes more commonplace in the sport, are going to have to go through to get to the highest levels of their profession. Because now you're not just talking about, well, if you want to coach in the league one day, you have to go through the Power Five. Well, now you have to go through whatever the next the level of college football looks like before you get to the 2 super conferences, and then try and pursue a different kind of a goal. I can't imagine that's going to expand the talent pool for coaches who are going to be interested in something that seems already super arduous, super time-consuming, and for those who don't love it and breathe it and live it every day like that, I can't imagine. Those people probably get weeded out through the process anyway. But I just think it's a fascinating dynamic from what that job is, Mac.
Well, let me give you, and I've talked with guys that are coaching in the business right now. Here's their take on it. And this is the take that's going to happen, Buck. When the power conferences are in charge and they don't have the NCAA regulations anymore on how many coaches you can have, it's going to go back to the day when you could have as many coaches as you wanted. Because, see, before the NCAA started regulating how many coaches you could have on a staff, the Oklahomas, the Texases, those people, they had 12 and 14 coaches. The NCAA cut that back because the smaller school says we can't compete there. And so, it was shrinking back then when it came under the purveyance of the NCAA. When the NCAA's out of it, there will be many more jobs because there's more money. There's more money, and there's going to be more that they are going to be able to do. You talk about name, image, likeness. There are going to be places in all of these major football schools that they are going to have complete departments for NIL that will be involved with the football program set up. And then the coaching on the field, there's going to be more jobs, Buck. It's going to be more jobs because there's going to be more money, and those power conferences will be regulated themselves. They will no more be under the purveyance of the NCAA rules that cover everybody from Division III all the way to the Power Five. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you added that perspective.
Well, I've talked about it with people just lately on this last trip. This is where it's coming to.
Yeah.
And again, because it's the football part of it, which is the major revenue generator, and is going to be, they're going to be a separate entity within these universities. And that's why you see these university presidents now embracing this, as to where years ago they did not embrace this. They're embracing this now because of where the money is and the way the networks are willing to pay for this. Because really, live sports with things like this, as you well know, you're in the industry, this is what generates numbers on television.
Coach,
this generates numbers, and this is where it is.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mac, I understand that it serves the financial health of the sport and ultimately of the leagues, whatever the leagues end up consisting of, when we start to see more finalized versions of this. I mean, there's still more dominoes, obviously, to fall yet, and all of it's trending in this direction. But you and I watch football differently than most people. Obviously, we love and enjoy the sport, but there's not quite this living and dying with our team. I mean, I don't know how you feel about TCU every Saturday, Mac, but I'm not living and dying with every Indiana football snap. I'm looking at this, though, for the people who do in the SEC and the Big 12 and the Pac-12 who, and again, going back even before those conferences, previous conferences folded in and created new conferences, as you mentioned, back in the 90s. This doesn't seem to me to ultimately serve the fan, but I guess the gamble is it's not going to cause people to turn off football.
They won't turn off football, and the fans of look, I can bring it back again, and I'm glad that we're talking about this now. Let's go clear back to 1996 when that happened, and schools like TCU were left out of that move, from the Southwest Conference and then to the Big 8, which became the Big 12. They said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to the foundation, and wherever we go, we're going to be the best at wherever we go. And so they did that, and then all of a sudden, then they came in there. Gary Patterson came in there, and they started dominating the Mountain West, and then they started and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, they're being invited back in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what's going to happen is look, the appetite and the consumption is not going to change. It's just there will be some angst at first just because of the geographical relocation of what's going to go on. But the consumption of it, I think, will even go up because Buck and the non-revenue producing sports, if you want to put it in that, they're going to benefit too because they'll still be under the purveyance of the university and they will still get the money to be able to. And plus, that the basketball tournament, the baseball World Series, those things still generate some income.
Sure.
So those non-revenue producing sports, they're going to benefit also because they will be under the umbrella of their universities that are bringing this money in. And so it's going to be a win-win for everybody. It'll just be a different type of win-win. Just like for all of us that grew up in Texas that thought the world was coming to an end, that it was the apocalypse when the Southwest Conference was broken up. Well, it's okay now.
Coach Dave McGinnis. Mac, that was a fun conversation. I appreciate you sharing some insights with the audience and with us on that. Thanks for stopping by. You got big plans for the 4th?
Yeah, I'll be on a couple of rooftops downtown.
That's why he's the man. Coach, maybe I'll see you out there. Have a great weekend, Mac.
See you, Buck. Thanks.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. What Mac so that's counter to what I've thought, and Mac's talking to a hell of a lot more coaches and people who work in the college industry than I have access to necessarily, because the idea that it would create more jobs is counterintuitive to what I would have thought there, and why, again, it makes sense for the financial health of the sport. Because if you're talking, Lucas brought this up earlier, right? College football, or at least this level of college football, becomes its own entity. And then you start to talk about players unionizing, and you start to talk about how these revenues are going to continue to be shared and split up. This whole thing, people aren't going to stop watching football. That's what it banks on. And that's something that has continued to stand the test of time. Ryan is in Mount Juliet up first. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, Buck. So, first of all, I'm a diehard Tennessee fan. I'm actually happy that all of this is happening just because I'm going to be able to watch more games that I actually care about watching.
Yeah.
The only downside to everything is here in the future, you're talking about players' unions and all of that. I'm worried that we're going to get away from a football player only having 4 to 5 years of eligibility to turning into 10 years of eligibility, because you've got people like a Johnny Manziel or a Tim Tebow that should have never made it to the league because they would have made more money playing for college football instead of in the NFL. And that would take away from how much we care about college football, because you only get 4 years with these players, and then you rotate into new players coming in. It's not like that in the NFL. That's all I've got.
Thanks for the call, Ryan. Look at him, just under the gun. I haven't heard that music, and I feel like I haven't worked in 3 weeks. I've been here so infrequently. I miss the Oscars music. I haven't heard it in a while. His point is correct, though. Look, think about it this way, okay? We've already seen college programs, whether it be football, basketball, or otherwise, have to experiment with additional eligibility, right? Look at some of the teams that we're talking about. One team that comes to mind, just because I happened to be reading about them the other day in one of the college football preview magazines. NC State has an incredible roster full of senior talent who took advantage of the additional COVID eligibility. And it's why they have a good chance to be able to compete in the ACC this year. For those of you who don't pay that close of attention to ACC football, you had Wake Forest and Pitt in the title game. If that final week of the regular season had turned out differently, NC State was 3 points away from playing in the ACC title. And that's the kind of stuff that you're looking at this year that can help a college football program. So then you're talking about, okay, well, again, in the same way that this, and now I kind of wish I wouldn't have let Matt go early, but in the same way that we're talking about this for college coaches, what does this mean for the college athlete? Because collectively bargaining, how are you going, okay, is there going to be dues that college athletes are going to have to pay to be in a union if they don't pay the dues, what happens to them as a result? Unions at the NFL level, they don't necessarily want to. It's not there for the protection of the rookies. It's there for the protection of the players who want to last longer than the average of 3 years. And so, how is that going to affect things like recruiting? It is a massive, massive domino effect that, again, they have accounted for in these ways, and they're banking on this still being the best possible thing. But it does find ways to keep players in the sport longer. That benefits college football. It does not benefit athletes who would like to play college football, and the turnover allows more of them to compete. John is in Cookeville up next. Hello, John.
Hello. So I'm actually very excited for the smaller schools because, like Tennessee Tech, Tennessee State, and the Ohio Valley Conference, smaller schools will be able to build these rosters. Like Tennessee Tech just got a 3-star athlete. That's high quality from us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so we will be able to build these like recruitments. And I think they just pulled in the Southland Conference with a partnership. All of the big schools, Murray State, Austin Peay, Belmont, left, Jacksonville State as well. So that leaves Tennessee State and Tennessee Tech to take over, build that, maybe bring in, play more against Vanderbilt, Tennessee. But I think the job opportunities for these smaller schools will be favorable because you can bring in a coach and say, hey, look what I did without all this money.
Yeah.
Built this school. And, hey, give me a job in this power school up here. That's all I got.
Thanks for the call, John. It's an important point and something that I think, for those of us, I don't necessarily, and I don't want to be, I don't want to be rude about it, but I don't necessarily think about the Tennessee Techs of the world. I haven't had to, right? If Tennessee Tech is able to advance in conferences the way that you've seen a lot of these schools do, and you talk about Jackson State, talk about MTSU, Belmont, by the way, isn't the president of Belmont on Blaine and Mickey today?
Yeah, 205. Today is the first day that Belmont is a member of the Missouri Valley Conference.
Right. So, advancement from what they were. And it continues to lift those tides for universities who have been competing at lower levels, who now have the opportunity to fill some of the slots in these various conferences. It just comes down to, okay, how much are their rights? I mean, we know how much I think we know how much of a difference there are between the rights for, the Missouri Valley or let's say the Missouri Valley basketball package on ESPN3 or ESPN Plus versus what you're doing with negotiating CBS and NBC and ESPN for SEC, Notre Dame, and Big Ten rights with Fox. Ben in Nashville is up next. Hello, Ben.
Hey, guys. What's going on? So just talking about the NIL again, I played football my freshman year at the University of Arkansas under Chad Morris. And something that I really noticed just early on in the program before the NIL was ever created, the conversation was starting, but it wasn't actually set in stone. So for a lot of these bottom feeder teams, and let's say the Power Five, 2017 at the time, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, we were at the bottom tier. And now that you've got these NIL deals and kind of leveling the playing field, do you think it's going to create a larger separation in terms of the talent that are coming into these schools? Because let's say you're a 4-star guy and Vanderbilt gives you a pretty good offer you can't decline, but you don't see any growth in terms of the football program. Is that going to be worth it to a lot of these high caliber players that may get more money at a lower tier school, but maybe won't have the success on the field that they're looking for to kind of send them to the next level? So that's what I'm curious to see as a lot of these other schools start to get some high caliber players, but in terms of translating to success on the field or competing better in their conference, I'm not sure if that's going to be as much of a factor. So I'm curious what y'all think about that.
No, I'd be inclined to agree. Thank you for the call, Ben. I feel like they know our rules too well now. Nobody's exceeded 60 seconds.
That was a great call.
They've taken away the thing that I love.
We've had some really good calls today.
Even as we've successfully gotten them to operate under the 60-second clock before they get the Oscars hook. I feel just like the love for college football may be changing, my love for the Oscars music. It's being taken away from me. But it is a great call because here's the thing. You evaluate this, and having never been through the recruitment process myself for like a Power 5, Lucas, I don't. Were you receiving Power 5 offers anywhere? What was your sport? Did you play sports?
For soccer, no, I was not receiving any interest.
Okay. So we can be there.
I recognized very early on I'd be doing this with a mic and not that with a ball for a living.
So having not been through that process ourselves, can't necessarily speak to it. In fact, it'd be interesting to get Ramon's insights on this. I'm sure they talked about it a great deal this morning. But I do think that factors in very, very much so. Kind of considering what then would be the cost-benefit analysis, and how much do advisors get into play? Again, the collectives in all of this, the NIL collectives who are going to be governing a lot of this, the attorneys who people are now contracting to be able to help guide them through this process. It's no longer just the decision of the athlete and their family. There are so many different competing interests that are going to factor into that. And, as is the case with anything, you'll see some people who abuse that situation to the benefit not of the athlete, but to themselves, given how many different people are going to be pulling these guys and girls in different directions to try and get them to make decisions that benefit everybody, right? Not just what their best interests are. Because now, it's what was Jeffrey Simmons talking about the other day at the podium when he's, kind of detailing maybe the idea that he's exploring representation, but they're not talking contract, or Mickey was trying to imitate the way that Jeff said contract, and then it made me very scared because it sounds like a 4-letter word that you can't say under any circumstances, much less not just on the FCC. Got to be scared. But I think that the idea of this is, Jeff Simmons, and this has always been the case, but now never this blatantly in college. Your body is your business, and now your business has a lot of people trying to fight over that business and divvy up that business. More of your phone calls on this coming up next. Welcome back. Buck Rising here with you, 104.5 The Zone. Been talking about realignment in college football. We're going to get into what comes next, which dominoes are next to fall here in just a minute. But in the meantime, you guys have been reacting to this and what you think this means for the world of college football. What we've told you and what we've had a couple of different people on today to talk to you about basically is how this affects every different part of the sport. The money we know. Coaching we talked about with Coach Mack. What this is going to create more opportunities for people to get high-level jobs or get into high-level programs in the way that the NCAA is no longer going to be able to cap. This kind of stuff creates a really interesting environment. And then, of course, there's the thing that people are arguing over as if they're commodities, and they're viewed as commodities, rightly or wrongly. That's the college athletes. JC in Franklin is next. Hello, JC.
Hey, what's going on, Buck?
What you got?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm wondering about when because the college athlete, he's a scholarship athlete, she's a scholarship athlete if they're at that level, if they're good enough. And when will there be a complete severance of the educational college portion from the athletics? Because now there's not that tie if there's NIL, at least for the top-rated athlete. And then what, does it just become like a club sport where it's totally separate from the university and time at the Power 5 level? And then the other one is just throwing it out there. How does the NFL protect its brand when now college athletes who are being paid may stay longer, hence your higher prospects? You're going to lose 1, 2, maybe 3 years from a prospect that's drafted when it comes time for them to be out. I'm just curious about that, and I'll hang up the list.
Well, JC, if the money's going up for college rights, you can be damn sure that it's going up for the NFL rights. The NFL is not going to be, they're not concerned with having to outbid college NIL deals. It's still, again, such a small percentage of the pie. Yeah, there will be more money poured into it, but until these athletes are collectively bargaining, they get no piece of the television money. Again, don't confuse what conferences are getting a year and what the member institutions are getting per year as a result of the television deals. Don't think that goes to the players. No. They would never let that happen willingly, because that would mean that their share of the pie gets smaller. This is something that until such time as the 2 or 3 power leagues form, move away from the rest of college football or the rest of college sports, and it no longer matters whether it's an NCAA-sanctioned sport or not. I mean, college football has been operating without the NCAA really for quite some time. The conference commissioners, not Mark Emmert, run this sport. They are the decision makers, the conference commissioners and the athletic directors. This has already been taken out of the NCAA's hands. Now, whether the NCAA wants to acknowledge that or not, that's probably, as we get ready to talk about dominoes that are going to fall, how long till that institution, speaking of institutions that are going to cave in on themselves, hell, I'd be happy to, help whatever helps push that over the ledge with the NCAA, because I feel, not knowing anybody that works there specifically and having no real, what is there to talk about with the NCAA unless they've screwed something up, right? I'm sure there are benefits of it at some point in time, but the ways that it holds down, not just the athletes, but the institutions now, the cost-benefit analysis does not work out in its favor.
But for a sport like football, right, and in many cases a sport like basketball, like Coach Mack said, something still needs to oversee the non-revenue sports. There still needs to be an entity that oversees bowling and tennis and golf and soccer. I don't know that the NCAA is going anywhere. NCAA probably needs to retool.
Well, yeah, but they're running a business model like it was 100 years ago up until last July. You know what I'm saying? Like that's and you're right. These are the things that will have to be worked through because again, football occupies so much of this space that everything else gets left by the wayside to figure it after the fact. They're dealing with the shockwaves of whatever football decides, and then you kind of adjust from there.
Yeah, football's too big a machine for the NCAA to have any sort of control over whatsoever anymore. There's several sports, though, that are NCAA sports that you can't say that about.
You know, speaking of, because a couple of the callers have brought up NIL. Did you happen to see the clip that was going around of the Texas A&M assistant coach on the recruiting visit?
Yeah, I was about to bring this up to you. I will say the audio is horrendous for radio.
So how do you? Okay, that's an important. That. You know what? That's good producing.
I figured that's where we were going here, and I just gave it a listen, and it's terrible.
It's really bad. Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen it, I don't know who the assistant coach is. Do we have a name?
Nope.
Okay. There's an assistant coach taking a group of recruits around on a tour of the stadium at Texas A&M. And he's pointing to the luxury suites at the stadium, at Kyle Field. And he is telling them there's a lot of people up there who are going to pay you guys a lot of money sitting in those suites if you choose to come play for Texas A&M. And while I watched that clip, and as the internet ceaselessly mocked that clip, all I could think of was Jimbo Fisher screaming at us not a month ago about how despicable it was that anybody would bring up the idea that Texas A&M is outright buying players. Uh-oh, did it freeze? Did Jimbo freeze? That's not your fault. It's okay. Lucas is going to figure it out.
First of all, I'll say it's a shame that we have to do this. It's really despicable. It's despicable that somebody can say things about somebody and an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids. You're taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their families. That they broke state laws. That they're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all in the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen, and it's ridiculous. But when he's not on top, and the parity in college football he's been talking about, go talk to coaches who coach for him. You'll find out all the parity. Go dig into wherever he's been. You can find out anything. And it's a shame that you got to sit here and defend 17-year-old kids and families and Texas A&M because we do things right. We're always going to do things right. But we're always going to be here. We're doing a heck of a job. These coaches have done a great job. Our players have done a great job. The whole organization of recruiting people. It's despicable that we got to sit there at this level of ball and say these things to defend the people of this organization, the kids, 17-year-old kids, and their families. It's amazing. Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know.
It goes on for another minute. I could listen to Jimbo be self-righteous all day. Jimbo, who's the guy telling the players that if they come there, these people in the luxury boxes are going to pay them? Who is this person, Jimbo? How mad do you think Jimbo was yesterday?
Oh, he probably threw his lunch at the wall. There's probably ketchup trickling down the walls in the Texas A&M facility.
Ketchup or blood? You be the judge. I don't know. Texas A&M fans, you guys, I know there's a couple of you in the audience. I love you all, but some of your traditions around your sports, they're kind of weird. So I don't know what's happening with these cult-like rituals that A&M performs. But what I will tell you is that for anybody to have the kind of indignation that you just heard from Jimbo, you're just asking to get got anytime something like this happens, because it's been happening long before name, image, and likeness was a thing. It's been happening long before in ways that, it was just less kosher to talk about it in the light of day. Jimbo, even at that press conference when he's saying, go look at, he's talking about Nick Saban, of course. Go look at how, some people think they're God. Well, go look at how God does his business. Go dig in. Jimbo, you were involved with a lot of that at LSU, bud, when you worked on God's staff. Football God's staff, that is. And for you to be the one who's out here trying to air people's dirty laundry out, sir, that is completely lacking in self-awareness. But you can go yell at a microphone about sliced bread, whatever makes you happy, Jimbo. Bring back sliced bread. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Coming up next, we're going to talk about what's the next domino to fall. USC, UCLA, the latest in the Big Ten. But there's a lot more movement coming, and it could be coming very soon.
It is 11:59. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. USC and UCLA have officially been approved for a move to the Big Ten after the conference's presidents and chancellors voted unanimously to accept both schools. They will begin competing in the Big Ten starting in 2024. In the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies and star Ja Morant have agreed to a massive 5-year, $193 million designated rookie maximum extension that could become worth $231 million, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson's hearing with the NFL and NFLPA Joint Disciplinary Officer Sue Robinson officially concluded on Thursday after 3 days. Now the wait begins to wait on Robinson's ruling regarding a potential suspension for Watson. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour off and rolling. Welcome in. Welcome back. If you've been hanging out with us so far, we're happy to have you either way. We're with you for one more hour today, one more hour this week. Myself, Lucas Panzica, or Lucas Panzica and myself. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. The conversation has been all college football today, across the board, talking about realignment, the Big Ten, the SEC, what this means for the ACC, what the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are going to do in the absence of their most important member institutions just picking up and leaving. This is the kind of stuff that has got the sports world paying attention today. 615-737-1045. But before we do that, all right, because I know the next call that we're going to take is specifically geared towards that. Can I get a little self-involved? I mean, I know it's a self-involved show. It's literally, my name is on the show. It's hard for me not to be self-involved about it. When I moved to Nashville 7 years ago, okay, I started out working at another spot, screening calls, okay, unpaid intern. And there was one person who I would talk to every day. Me in a terrible, crappy little production studio, screening calls for another radio show. And this person was the highlight of my day each and every day because he always brought the energy. And I haven't heard this name. I haven't seen this name in a very long time. But now that we've got our radio show, it makes me very happy to take this call from Dr. Detroit. Doc, long time no talk, my guy.
My God, I got chill bumps and teary-eyed over that.
It makes me so happy. What's up, Doc?
I've got to christen your show, my brother's keeper, Captain, my captain. So good to hear you. Hey, guess what? Sunday, while I was at the NASCAR race, I had become Dr. Detroit for 27 years on that Sunday, the 26th of June.
Congratulations, Doc. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.